with Russia, but till that moment comes, he can count on continuing support, and Putin cannot count on us letting go of that support. We will keep this going, and this is what we are all committed about. This is what I hear consistently in all my talks in the alliance. I also welcome what the US has announced yesterday. They already, of course, pledged $8 billion. Very concretely yesterday, they pledged almost half $1 billion in air defense and other aid going into Ukraine. I welcome the Australian announcement yesterday about the tanks which will go to Ukraine. So this is all good news, and there were many other announcements. I will not go through the whole list, but these were a few big ones I would like to mention this morning. With that, I'm happy to take your questions.
Mr. Secretary General,
We'll start with ZDF, please.
Yes. Good morning.
Good morning. Goedemorgen. NATO is also discussing new demands on MCR, minimum capability requirements. Germany seems not to be able to fulfill these demands. How will you deal with that?
Well, don't forget the speech Olaf Scholz gave to the Bundestag, the Zeitenwende speech. Basically the weekend, the Saturday or Sunday after the full onslaught of Russia on Ukraine. Obviously, the whole of the alliance has to work hard to make sure that we meet the targets, that we close the gaps. Now, today, we are absolutely stand ready to defend NATO territory against any threat, but we want to make sure that also in the future we will be there. That will mean work for Germany, the Netherlands, France, the UK, the US. All 32 partners will work very hard to achieve that. But here, the 100 billion pledged by Olaf Scholz was an important moment, I think, in German history. And I really want to applaud him again for that particular moment.
Mr. Secretary General, top of President Zelensky's list is, of course, an invitation to NATO, as it has long been. Do you get the sense that allies are moving in their willingness to grant him this, what he considers is the ultimate security guarantee, short of Article 5?
What we have said in Washington, and of course I will constantly repeat the language, but I think it was significant, the irreversible path to NATO membership. So that means that, yes, in the future NATO will have, as a 32 or 34th member, we will have Ukraine. At the moment it seems that it will be Ukraine as number 33, but maybe somebody else pops in front of him. But Ukraine will be a member of NATO in the future. That is what we decided in Washington. So the question is then about the timeline. What we are doing now with the pledge on track, with what we are doing in Wiesbaden, the command, what we are doing is all the bilateral aid going into Ukraine at the moment. All the efforts being coordinated amongst the allies to work on the reconstruction of Ukraine. The fact that we have now JTEC in Poland, which is working on the interoperability of Ukraine with NATO. This collectively, plus all the national security guarantees bilaterally with Ukraine, they collectively constitute a bridge to NATO membership. So then the question is exactly about the when. I cannot answer that now at this moment, but clearly we are working on all these tracks to make sure that indeed one day they will be a member of NATO.
Mr. Secretary General.
Morning.
What are the points that you're going to focus on this afternoon with Mr. Zelensky regarding the victory plan?
Well, first of all, what we always do is update each other. So I want to hear from him where he is at the moment, how he sees things developing on the Eastern Front with Russia. The situation in Kursk, obviously, this is always on our list. I will update him on the decisions being made in NATO, where we are on, as I mentioned, the pledge and NSETU, but also JTEC and all the other initiatives being rolled out at the moment. And again, stress in my conversation with him that he has to be absolutely assured that 32 allies are united in making sure that collectively we will do whatever is needed to make sure that Ukraine can prevail, that Putin will not get his way.
Okay, Swedish television. Yes, Mr. Secretary General.
Morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
It was a successful visit yesterday of your Prime Minister.
I saw that.
Yeah.
I saw that. You were supposed to discuss strategy on Russia during the meeting these days. And clearly Russia is no longer to be called a partner of NATO. But what is it then? Is it an adversary? Is it an enemy? Is it a competitor? And why does this matter?
When I had my first NATO summit in Portugal, we had President Medvedev, who was then president. Then, for political reasons, Putin was prime minister. But then President Medvedev in a meeting with NATO and Russia. Those days are far behind, beyond us. So that will not happen in a near or distant future. I'm convinced. So that brings us to the question how to deal with that particular relationship with Russia. And that is a step-by-step approach. It might come up today. It will probably also be discussed when we have the foreign ministers meeting later this year. And this will probably take us right through to summer next year when we have the NATO summit in The Hague. How do we relate to Russia long term? The short term is clear, making sure that Putin does not get his way in Ukraine. But also for the longer term, there are questions to be answered. And as Secretary General, I don't want to preempt that debate, but it is ongoing. And rightly so, because this is a relationship we really have to carve out for the long term.
Okay, over to the gentleman.
Good morning. Does NATO have an assessment of how much support Belarus provide to Russia in this war against Ukraine? What kind of assistance it was, and does Belarus continue to provide it?
Well, all evidence is that Belarus, that Minsk, is supporting Russia in the war effort with infrastructure, with territory, and at a cost for your population, for the Belarusian population. I mean, Belarus clearly is not doing this from a position of strength. And that means that it is hurting the country. It's not helping you. And it is helping and supporting Putin in the war effort against Ukraine. And this has got to stop. But obviously that's up to Belarus and the Belarusian politics and people to do that. But at this moment, your country is suffering because of your president providing that support from a position of weakness, can I say.
Okay, we'll take two more questions. Gentleman in white.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Aldin Kulic, Radio Sarajevo, Bosnia and Herzegovina. Yesterday you talked about Russia's influence in the Western Balkans, the risks for secessions in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and KFOR's role. What more should we expect ministers to discuss about stability in the region, especially Bosnia and Herzegovina?
Yes, today, of course, tomorrow when we meet with the 32. So today will be with our partners in the Pacific. Tonight we have President Zelensky visiting. After that we have a meeting of the NATO-Ukraine Council. But tomorrow we will meet with the 32 and there we will very much focus on all other issues. And there's a long list, including, of course, KFOR. And that means that we have to be aware of the tensions on the Western Balkans. The fact that the Pristina-Belgrade dialogue is not moving ahead as we would love to and want to. The EU-facilitated dialogue, which we support, that we are, of course, worried about the secessionist tensions still trying to steer division within Bosnia-Herzegovina society. So that will be no doubt on the agenda, and to make sure that we do everything in our messaging and our concrete support to support the Western Balkans. And therefore I was particularly very glad with the meeting taking place in Berlin earlier this week under the leadership of Chancellor Scholz of the Western Balkan countries, because I know that Germany is particularly working very hard at bringing that group closer to the EU, closer to NATO for those who are not already in NATO, etc.
Okay, thank you. One final question to the gentleman at the back. Can you raise your hand, please?
Johan Andersson, Swedish Radio. What about the situation in Middle East, and how does this current situation affects NATO?
Well, obviously, I think all of us here, we are extremely worried about what is happening in the Middle East, in Gaza, Israel, of course, in Lebanon at the moment. Israel is fighting on multiple fronts against Iran and its proxies. It's costing a lot of lives, and that human suffering is paining all of us. And I know in my calls and meetings with allies that they are on an hour-to-hour basis trying to navigate that crisis. NATO obviously is not as an organization involved here. Indirectly, yes, because we have an important mission in Iraq on request of the Iraqi government, helping them to build their military and to improve their capabilities. But obviously this is very much on our mind, but probably not a main issue because of NATO not being part of that region. And as Stoltenberg said before, we cannot solve everything. We really have to concentrate on the Euro-Atlantic realm.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. See you later today, a couple of times. Great.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm very much looking forward to my first defense ministers meeting of NATO under the leadership of our new Secretary General, whom I of course know very well personally. I'm very much looking forward to continue our cooperation. I think the support to Ukraine is a key priority for these days. I went to Kharkiv and Kiev 10 days ago, and the situation both at the front line but in big cities as Kharkiv is very concerning. So I think we need to step up our efforts. Second, we need to talk about bolstering our defense and deterrence, because the Russian threat is only increasing, not only in the short term but also in the longer term. And third, I'm also looking forward to strengthen our partnerships with our partners in the Indo-Pacific. I visited Korea myself a few weeks ago. We also discussed ways in which we can further strengthen that. And I think that's beneficial for both security in Europe and security in the Indo-Pacific.
Which message do you think this meeting today with the Asia-Pacific partners is going to send to China?
I think the message is going to be that we are strong partners and friends, that we share the same values, and that we stand together against any form of aggression and any form of autocracies who do not share our values and who do not respect international law.
You delivered F-16s to Ukraine. Do you accept that Ukraine uses these planes far or deep inside Russian territory? Like, for example, Germany would not allow that, or Belgium?
Yeah. We have delivered our first batch of F-16s. They are currently in Ukrainian airspace. And we have always said that Ukraine needs to comply with international law. But international law does not contain any restrictions in terms of distance. International law doesn't stop at the border or 100 kilometers away from the border. So we allow Ukraine to use the F-16s for their self-defense. And for the self-defense, it might be needed to intercept missiles or to hit, for example, airfields in Russia, so military targets. And that's also allowed to do that inside Russian territory or in Russian airspace.
Good morning, everyone. So it is an important day here in NATO headquarters because we have also later today NATO Ukraine Council. I believe this is the biggest and main topic today because we will discuss, of course, President Zelensky's victory plan. For me, it is good to see that in this victory plan, we see most of these elements what Estonia has been talking about a long time already. And the main focus of this is that Ukraine will win this war, of course, and territorial integrity, more help, more military support. So I really do hope that this will not be only a plan on the paper, but we will see next steps. We will see what we will do as next. And I really do hope that we will have the opportunity also to discuss with President Zelensky and Defense Minister Umerov all these possibilities, how we can increase and speed up the military support to Ukraine. Secondly, what is important for us from Estonian perspective is that we are signing today a roadmap for next 2 years with United Kingdom. how their footprint will be in Estonia. We know that they have allocated a brigade to Estonia. We know that that British troops will increase their presence in Estonia regarding the equipment, regarding the capabilities, and we will inform, of course, and then publish a press release later today. But from bilateral cooperation, this is very important, and it's very, very important that also French troops are part of this this agreement. Thirdly, of course, we start today with the partners. For me personally, it is very important that the partners are on board. The situation in Asia, South China Sea, and in the neighborhood is still quite tense, and we hope to get some more information, and we see how Russia is increasing their cooperation with North Korea and China. And this is why I believe that our cooperation with Japan, with Korea, with Australia and New Zealand is very, very important. So it's a milestone event because we have never had before such an event. And last but not least, fourth topic for me, I'm very happy to announce that Sweden will officially join the IT coalition in support for Ukraine. You know that Estonia and Luxembourg are leading the IT coalition, and this is very, very important that we have more and more countries joining the IT coalition. And now we try to get also more speedy process from NATO headquarters, specifically NSPA, so NATO Procurement Agency. And just to remark regarding the NATO headquarters, we know that the military support mission NSATU needs to be also implemented very quickly, and Estonia has done its share. So we have given our our officer to this mission, and we have also fulfilled our obligation, what we said, that we will help Ukraine with military support at least with 0.25% from our GDP this year. So these four topics.
Question. Part of the victory plan from Zelensky is an invitation letter by NATO within the year. Do you think this is realistic? Is this possible?
Estonia has always been on the position that the only security guarantee, what is real, is membership of NATO for Ukraine. So we really do hope that, that's why I said that I really do hope that it will not be only the plan or the paper, that we will see actions and we will see some next steps. And I hope that President Zelensky, when he visited the United States, he discussed also that with the US government, and we will see next steps in next year.
All NATO countries are not as eager as Estonia in supporting Ukraine. How would you encourage them to go further?
Well, I just suggest them to look at the battlefield situation. Every single day there are people who are dying. Every single day there are mothers who are losing their children. Every single day there are children who are losing their fathers or mothers. And this is the real situation. People are dying every single day. And it is in our hands to say that no, that we are not helping Ukraine to fight this war, but we are helping Ukraine to win this war. So this is the main message, and we all know that Ukraine is also fighting for our values, for our freedoms at the moment in Ukraine against the aggressor, Russia.
On the meeting with the AP4, what is the strategy to go forward with China, who has somehow become involved as well in the war in Ukraine by delivering dual-use goods, for example?
Well, definitely this is one of the biggest challenges we have, because we clearly see that China is playing on both ends. China is cooperating with Russia in the same or at the same time they don't want to lose the connection to the West, to the United States. So definitely it is very important that we keep this in mind, that we need to also pressure China in order to not to help Russia, because These are the values we are standing for. We are standing for the freedoms. We are standing for the free press. You are here today, so we don't see that in dictatorships. So let's see how it evolves. It's definitely, you know, a challenge for all of us, and this is why also we have this meeting today with the partners to get their opinion, their view on the region more closely.
Danger that we come back to a kind of Cold War situation with blocs, Iran, China, Russia, North Korea on the one hand, and then the NATO allies on the other?
I see that Russia is moving in that direction, that they are trying to form that kind of axis of evil, or, you know, that kind of composition of countries which will be against the freedoms, against the free world, against the democracies. So this is why it is very important for us to be united, for us to be as one, and not to let this happen, that the free world will disappear. Yes, last question, because there is someone coming.
Hi. Today, the Secretary General will lay out that of what NATO has promised for this year, half has been delivered. Is that a high enough ambition for you, simply to say that keeping this at current levels and delivering on the schedule that you said you would, is that enough to put Ukraine in this strong position that Zelensky needs to possibly negotiate at some point for an end to the war?
We've always been saying that we need to do more. This is why we came out with the victory plan from our side, or the victory strategy for Ukraine. And in this paper we said that it has to be at least 0.25 from each country's GDP. When each country would do that, then we would have around 120 billion annually. But we are not giving, or we are not getting even half of that. So of course we need to push forward, and you know, at the end of the day, we have to support Ukrainians, and we have to support implementation of that victory plan, what Zelensky has offered. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Very nice to be at the NATO Defense Ministerials. We're looking forward, of course, to welcoming the Defense Ministerial. We're going to have an intensive 2 days. Of course, we're going to be talking with the AP4 countries about the Indo-Pacific and the connection to the Euro-Atlantic region. On the Swedish perspective, we think it's very important to intensify the cooperation between our four Indo-Pacific partners, both Australia, New Zealand, South Korea and Japan. Sweden just recently also launched a defense policy strategy for the Indo-Pacific as well. And I traveled extensively in the region. After that, of course, we're looking forward also to the NUC meeting and the meeting with Minister Umerov and possibly President Zelensky. Sweden is a very sizable contributor to Ukraine. We're going to continue supporting Ukraine for as long as it takes. We are right now, of course, doing a lot of transitioning in our support. We are delivering on our 17th support package, but also going to be doing more donations as well. Lastly, let me also say that for the meeting on Friday, Sweden recently proposed a bill to the Swedish Parliament where we announced that we're going to contribute with a reduced battalion to FLF in Latvia. We're going to contribute to NATO air policing and also to NATO standing maritime forces. In addition, just 2 days ago, we launched also a bill to the Swedish Parliament where we are increasing our defense investment. So by next year, we're going to be up at 2.4%, and by 2028, we're going to be at 2.6% of GDP. So I think this will be an important contribution for Sweden wanting to be a security provider within the alliance.
Burden sharing, and the US yesterday explained that actually to live up to the deterrence targets of NATO in the upcoming years, the allies would have to step up and possibly contribute 2.5 or 3%, even 3% of GDP. Do you think this is realistic, given that now only 23 allies have even achieved the 2% target?
It's a floor, but it's not the ceiling, and it's not nearly enough for the needs that Sweden has, and therefore we're going up to a trajectory of 2.6% by 2028. We, of course, now when we present this defense bill, everything that's in this defense bill will be making sure that we also can have a better capability to live up to the capability targets. The capability targets are demanding and they're ambitious, but they have to be that. A top priority for Sweden is to make sure that the new regional plans that now are being drafted are executable. In the case of Sweden, we focus quite a lot on enablement, meaning focusing on logistics, maintenance, spare parts, both to have the ability to fight tonight, but also to have a stronger resilience into our armed forces. And we identified the numerous lessons, of course, from the battlefield in Ukraine that were also integrated into the Swedish armed forces.
Victory plan that Zelensky is presenting, he wants to be invited by NATO for membership within the year. Is this possible?
Of course, the victory plan, and we take note, we firmly stand behind the conclusions from the Washington summit that Ukraine is on an irreversible track on becoming a full-fledged member of NATO, which is important. Let me also say that we have many things to learn from Ukraine, both when it comes for defense innovation, and they have strong armed forces as well.
President Zelensky also wants more security guarantees from NATO allies, even short of Article 5. If he walks away from here without additional security guarantees, doesn't that put him in a more insecure position? And what kind of support do you think he can get today?
Remains to be seen. As I said, we welcome the plan, and it's going to be discussed tonight, and then we see how the discussions evolve. Of course, membership here and now is not an option because Ukraine is in the case of war. Of course, we as you know, we were an invitee into the alliance, and we had a very close collaboration with NATO as a partner, and we'll be glad to share any experience that we had from that process.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, dear distinguished media representatives, good morning. This is an important meeting today and tomorrow as well. Of course, there are important subjects timely to discuss. Also under new leadership of Secretary General Mark Rutte. I am absolutely certain that there will be continuity of the activities, the plans, the ambitions which have been already implemented under the previous Secretary General. And of course, it is important to continuously focus on defense and deterrence of NATO, on implementing regional plans, on, of course, implementing rotational model. It's extremely important for the eastern flank, also for Latvia, rotational model and protecting our airspace. Of course, it is important continuously to support Ukraine until victory. We underline the importance of Ukraine using all assets, also Western assets, NATO assets provided by NATO members, also to target legitimate targets on Russian territory. Ukraine has absolute right to self-defense, and that's why also this is absolutely legitimate. And of course also important to discuss what happens more globally, including in Indo-Pacific, also what are the Russia's activities, how we can contest, constrain, challenge also those Russia's activities, because of course it is also about hearts and minds and interests more globally. So that's why Indo-Pacific is also a very important field of strategic interest for NATO.
The frontline countries have been asking for more NATO clarity on what to do about airspace incursions.
Yep.
You're talking about putting up a wall of drones, things like this. But what do you want from NATO? More air defense, but also more political guidance on what they intend to do when there are, for example, the armed drones that crash in the country?
Absolutely. We have experienced a serious incident. Incursion by Russian Shahed drone on Latvian soil, in Latvian airspace, and we must remember that Latvian airspace is NATO airspace. Crossing Latvian border, it's crossing NATO airspace and NATO border. So that's why we have committed ourselves to defending the NATO territory from first inch, and it means also first inch in air. That's why absolutely it is important that we strategically and politically move forward with those ambitions and commitments which have been made. It is about rotational model, implementing those rotational model. On eastern flank, we see that there are also the necessity to upgrade air policing to air defense mission. that it's not just about dealing with Russian jet fighters, but also, as we see, with such objects as armed drones. So it is about NATO credibility. It is about credibility, how we are able to respond. I think we already made some adjustments. Eastern flank countries have made a very clear statements in this regard. B9, Bucharest 9 meeting was just recently taking place, and also there was underlining importance of dealing together. So it means that we should implement those long-term already ambitions and commitments immediately to react right now, and also to adjust to the new challenges. And drones absolutely are new challenge as well. It's a new reality, and the war is closer than it seems.
But do you want them to be shot down? Do you want NATO to be prepared in NATO airspace with the air mission to shoot them down before they possibly land on a Latvian village? Is that what you're asking?
We believe that, of course, once it crosses NATO border, first of all, it must be detected clearly, and then, of course, it is allowed, the circumstances allows, it should be intercepted, basically being shot down.
On the victory plan of President Zelensky, how realistic do you think is his demand to get an invitation for NATO membership within a year?
I mean, of course, we will see also the more detailed plan, but we support the victory plan. We believe that Ukraine must have victory against aggressor country. It is for all of us important. It is about wider repercussions, implications. If we don't invest in supporting Ukraine as much as we can, as long as it takes right now, of course, the costs will be higher in the future. So that's why implications of what we do right now are extremely important. Latvia has supported the NATO membership for Ukraine, but at the very end, it is about 32 members of NATO, which should unanimously also agree on NATO membership. So the dialogue, the discussion, the conversation within alliance also goes on. Latvia has a clear stance in this regard.
Some NATO members don't allow Ukraine to use the weapons that are delivered deep inside Russia, like, for example, Germany. What is your position on this?
Well, I already stated my and our position, and it's very clear. It is that Ukraine must be allowed to use weapons provided also hitting legitimate targets in Russian territory.
His presentation of the peace plan, is he in a more insecure position than he arrives in Brussels?
Well, I believe that it is a continuous dialogue. It is a continuous search also for what steps we are making. Yes, we are 32 members of NATO. Of course, there are diversity also sometimes of the detail, but I think it is always very clear that there is no diversity in terms of the clear understanding how important it is, what takes place, what Ukraine is fighting for, and that support must be provided. Yes, then in details, we see that there are different opinions sometimes how specific steps must be taken. We must also remember that already back in Vilnius summit, the NATO membership for Ukraine, it was agreed when conditions allow, when allies agree. So allies agree is an important part of this. But then again, what we see strategically and clearly in Washington summit, irreversibility of Ukraine's path to NATO. So I think it was very clearly stated. Yes, so now already we discuss more about details, how we make this irreversible path as soon, as short as possible.
One of the biggest partner in drone coalition for Ukraine.
Yes.
Are you looking for buying some Ukrainian product drones for your army? Maybe you're interested in it. It's important for our industry to know that we have some partners who are ready to buy our production.
We have, of course, very close partnership with Ukraine in this regard. So yes, it's a co-led, the drone coalition is being co-led by UK and Latvia. And Latvia, of course, puts a great emphasis and effort in the success of this coalition. We are also in continuous dialogue with our Ukrainian counterparts, what is exactly needed. We see that there are several ways how to provide and contribute to the success of the drone coalition, and the primary goal, of course, the success of Ukraine fighting for its independence and freedom. And there, of course, are the bilateral donations by nation states, by local industry. There is a specific fund which is also open for wider procurement, and there are also drone coalition members which are investing directly into Ukraine. So that's why, of course, we strongly encourage to move forward with all those activities. And Ukraine must be on board very actively actively involved. Ukraine has I think, immense experience in drone warfighting. I think we can also learn a lot from what Ukraine is doing, also in terms of developing technology. So I see this is a long-term cooperation project, and I would say the mission and ambition for a long term for us to cooperate, and also, of course, to take into account what are the experiences, technologies, know-how of Ukrainian soldiers, Ukrainian industry, Ukrainian innovation.
Donald Trump seems to be confident to have the ability to end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours. If he was elected president in 2 weeks, how would that affect NATO relations and more broadly the world order?
Well, of course, the elections in the US are very important. The US is indispensable in NATO security and defense and deterrence. Efficiency and strengths. Of course, it is also very important, indispensable, integral part of supporting Ukraine in its war effort, in its fight for freedom. So that's why, of course, we look very carefully. At the same time, we must remember that now we speak about a pre-election campaign. Of course, there are different information and campaign slogans are coming out. At the very end, I believe that the US will be continuously supporting Ukraine. Yes, might be some difference of emphasis, but US is important. It will support, and I think also Mark Rutte has expressed it very clearly. We move forward with any administration. All administrations, I think also in the United States, are very aware of the fact that Ukraine fight for its freedom and that implications of that fight is much wider also for the United States. Thank you very much. Yes, have a nice day. Bye-bye. Thanks.
Okay, good morning to you all. Important 2 days ahead of us. First of all, for Finnish perspective, we think that the defense and deterrence is our top priority in this meeting. We are seeing good progress in the NATO's strengthening the deterrence and defense sector. We still need a lot of new work to do on that sector, more troops, capabilities, investments, and we have to do it fast. There's no time to waste. And of course, these days, one top priority is also the Ukrainian support. We need more support to Ukraine, and NATO has to deliver what we have promised also. And that's why we have to also do a lot of work today on that sector. And third pillar is our partners, global partners, EU, for example, and new Commission is in a crucial role to ramp up the defense industry, especially in the European sector, but also in transatlantic sector. So the defense industry is a key element in these partnerships with EU, but also with the Indo-Pacific partners, which are also today here. We are. I just visited 2 weeks ago in the Pacific area, and we see that the deeper cooperation in defense material systems, industry, cyber, space, and critical technologies. There's a lot of potential in future years. Not only with Finland, but we see that all the NATO countries with Indo-Pacific partners can do a closer cooperation in those fields. But thank you.
Do you see any room for movement among the allies on President Zelensky's top priorities, giving not just more weapons, but also on this long-standing wish to be invited to NATO? We hear behind the scenes that there is some shift in positions, countries seeming more willing to give at least a stronger signal on this, perhaps by the Hague summit. Do you sense that in your meetings?
I think I will see the discussion today and can assess that tomorrow, maybe clearer.
If Zelensky leaves Brussels without any new promises, that would be seen by Putin clearly as a kind of that Putin is winning. Can you give some new promises to Zelensky, as on weapons as well as on coming forward with membership?
Well, I'm not starting to speculate on that. I think that the NATO countries are quite united and are strong to support Ukraine, but the key problems are now in the defense industry capacity and the pace what we can do to ramp up the defense industry to give more weapons and ammunition to Ukraine. And even though we are seeing that Russia is now benefiting the situation from the Middle East, because there is a war and the United States have to participate in that field in somehow. maybe in a longer stance also. That's why European countries must ramp up the defense industry quite fast.
Finland has a direct border with Russia. Do you feel enough supported by NATO countries to protect this border also from hybrid attacks?
Well, first of all, we are really happy to see the progress, what's going on in the Finnish integration to NATO. First of all, we have strong our own army. That's why we are a little bit in a different position than other countries in the eastern border. But still, we are getting this land command component, and that's going in the right track and in a good pace also. And we are getting this forward land forces concept, and that's also under the negotiations, but still I'm really positive about that progress. And also the points of view about the allied countries, how to secure also the northern parts, the new northern parts of the alliance, Finland, Sweden and the High North area. We are having a meeting with the High North countries today, and we are discussing this High North agenda today. So that's in a key priority for Finland, but we are really happy to see that all the NATO countries are also seeing that the High North area is valuable and crucial for the whole alliance.
What can you tell us about the discussions on the FLF troops during this meeting? What kind of meetings will you have on that, and maybe with Sweden also?
Well, we are having bilateral meetings in this meeting, but also in other cases. So in this meeting we are having these top priority things, the NATO's overall deterrence situation and the Ukrainian support and this. But overall, I'm really positive and optimistic about the FLF project. It's going on the right track.
Ukraina tulee tänne pyytämään apua ja kutsua NATOon. Mitä muuta NATOlla on nyt tarjota kuin kannustusta ja puhetta? Hehän eivät voi lähteä täältä pettyneinä.
Me tiedetään, että Ukraina tarvitsee konkreettista apua ja Suomi on antanut 25 aseapupakettia, 2,3 miljardia euroa arvoltaan ja tulemme jatkaa vahvana tätä tukea. Ja me toivotaan tietysti, että kaikki maat antaa vahvaa konkreettista aseapua ja tukea. Ja Ukrainalla on tiettyjä esityksiä, joita jokainen maa varmasti yhdessä arvioi. Uskon, että se henki tällä hetkellä on se, että kaikki tietää, että on kriittisen tärkeää antaa kaikki se apu, mitä Ukraina tarvitsee. Vasta sitä kautta syntyy sit edellytykset rauhanneuvottelulle oikeasti.
Entä tuo psykologinen tuki, joka tulisi mahdollisesti tästä kutsusta? Oletteko te valmis lähettämään sellaisen?
Me arvioidaan näitä yhdessä ja se on tänään mielenkiinnolla odotetaan tietysti puolustusministeri Umerovin tapaamista. Mulla on kahdenvälinen tapaaminen Umerovin kanssa iltapäivällä ja sen jälkeen illan kokous Umerovin kanssa ja ilmeisesti Zelenski myös tulee siihen kokoukseen mukaan.
Miten muotoilisit vielä tänne, että onko se kutsu mahdollinen tai realistinen sinne Haagiin mennessä?
En lähde nyt sitä arvioimaan, että nyt pitää myös sillä lailla pitää katse pallossa, että se mikä on ihan puhtaasti länsimaiden käsissä on lisää rahaa, lisää aseita, lisää ammuksia, pitkäaikaisia tilauksia puolustusteollisuudelle kotimaassa ja sitten yhteishankintoja. Ja näissä tarvitaan tietysti EUn tämä tiivis yhteys. Sen takia EU on nyt keskeinen NATO-kumppani tässä Ukrainan tuessa. Kiitoksia.
Good morning. I'm John Healey. I'm the new UK Defence Minister. And at this time of my first NATO Defence Ministers meeting here in Brussels, it comes at a time when the UK's unshakable commitment to NATO could never be more important. And at a time of growing Russian aggression and increasing wider threats, today we will make the commitment to reinforce NATO's eastern flank with a new plan alongside Estonia for our forces there. And we will make a commitment, a UK commitment, to bolstering the future of Europe's defences, leading a new initiative to net together the European air defence systems and to work together with other European allies to develop long-range missiles. This is part of the UK's new determination to work more closely with other European allies on security for the future. And Europe's security is guaranteed by this NATO alliance. Thank you. Yes.
What are your thoughts on Ukraine's victory plan that was introduced by President Zelensky? Is it realistic to implement?
I'm pleased that President Zelensky came last week to London to brief me and the British Prime Minister on the victory plan. It's very important he's here in Brussels to brief NATO defence ministers today. The message will be quite clear. We, as Ukraine supporters, must do everything we can to step up our support for Ukraine in the weeks and months ahead, to put more pressure on Russia, to ensure that Ukraine can prevail, because the defence of Europe starts in Ukraine. They're fighting for the same values and same beliefs and same freedoms that we prize, and we owe them that duty to stand with them for as long as it takes.
What can you give President Zelensky on his way home? What new promises can you provide?
Well, we've been a UK government for just 3 months now. On day 2 in my job, I was in Odessa with President Zelensky because Ukraine is a first-order priority for me as the UK Defence Secretary and for the UK government. So we've stepped up our UK support for Ukraine, military aid. We've stepped up the production of fresh weapons, including air defence systems, which the Ukraine are asking for. And we've also struck a new treaty for export guarantees and industrial production. And in that way, like other allies together, we can help with the provision of military aid now and the production of what Ukraine needs in the weeks and months ahead.
Today is also the meeting of the AP4 countries together with the allies. Which strategy should the NATO adopt here together with its partners when it comes to China, who has become militarily involved also in the Ukrainian conflict?
Look, I'm delighted we've got the 4 defence ministers from the IP4 here with us today at NATO. It stresses for me 2 things. First of all, that the security of the North Atlantic is indivisible from the security of the Indo-Pacific. So the concerns about the Indo-Pacific are also concerns for NATO nations. And secondly, with President Zelensky here, some of the staunchest supporters for Ukraine's fight for freedom have been countries like the IP4 that are not in the NATO area, but in the Indo-Pacific area. They're fighting and they stand for the same freedoms and values that we do. And Ukraine's fight is also their fight. Thank you very much.
One last question.
eigentlich genau erst in 2 Jahren vorgesehen und da sagt Deutschland jetzt irgendwie, man soll das auch schneller machen.
It's Minister of Lithuania, Defense Minister.
Belarus border. Do you fix any activity of Belarusian troops, or how it looks the situation with the illegal migrants on your border?
Illegal migration now, the situation is quite stable. I think we implemented the tools who let us stabilize and control the situation. Now we have a new phenomena which is connected to smuggling. We're using now not the drones for the smuggling, but the meteorological balloons. And we're bringing the cigarettes to our country by the balloons who are not controlled. But anyway, we are like create the risk for, especially for civilian aviation. So now we're implementing the tools against smuggling networks, but also, sending the signals to the Belarusian side to stop that kind of activities, because it creates the risk for civilian aviation.
And what about troops? Do you fix any activity?
Not expected. I mean, everything according to the traditional plans. We know very well what our intelligence is strong enough to have clear indicators where there is a training exercises, there is a real threat. So now, at this moment, we don't feel nothing unusual. But you always should be prepared. Thank you.
Of the President Zelensky's victory plan, and more specifically his demand to get an invitation from NATO within the next year?
Very positive. I think invitation, first of all, it is not membership. Invitation is just a first stage, showing the Ukrainian nation that Russia does not have the veto power on the NATO enlargement. It's very important to send a message to Ukrainian nation which fights now for all our security, but they in the future can have a membership in NATO. But invitation is a first stage. And if you give the invitation, it's real irreversible page of history. So it's a real, not in the wordings, just in conclusions, but it's a real irreversibility on point of no return. And sending the message to Russia, but we don't have the veto power, informal veto power on NATO and NATO enlargement. But in this plan, there are also other important aspects, like, for example, to help to Ukraine right now. We know what NATO countries has the resources to do it more and more effectively.
But the Secretary General was very reluctant.
Now? So would you advocate giving this invitation now, as
I
he's
would
asking?
give, yes, yeah, absolutely.
Secretary General Rutte was reluctant on giving a timeline for this invitation. Why is that? Why are there still bottlenecks among some of the allies?
Many countries, many approaches, many views, and you need to find the common ground. We are Baltics, with Lithuania. We understand the situation, and we have, if we want to stop Russia, if we want to break their military machine, you need to support Ukraine.